I always thought my 19th birthday would feel like a sign of freedom, like finally stepping out of the shadows. I woke up that morning thinking, today's the day I get the keys to the car. Dad promised, the celebration, the laughter. But deep down, I sensed something was off. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My two older brothers were already downstairs, voices echoing in the kitchen. They sounded too comfortable, as if they'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. I padded down the stairs, the dull morning light sliding across the polished marble floors of our family home. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but the mood, it felt heavy. My father was at the breakfast table, sitting still, his face drawn, his eyes tired. He didn't hug me. He didn't say happy birthday the way he usually did. Instead, he slid an envelope across the table toward me, a plain white envelope. No smile, no speech, just silence. I opened it, hands trembling with expectation. Inside, a small black phone. Not even the flashy kind. Just locked. No note. No instructions. Just a look from him that said more than words. I stared at him, confused. He simply said, "Use it when you're ready." Then he stood up and left. I watched him walk away, leaving the room, leaving me, leaving a question behind. My brothers smirked like they knew something I didn't. And that was it. That was my birthday gift. They got everything else: the cars, the shares, the roles in the company, the family empire. I got a phone that wouldn't turn on. That morning, I didn't just lose a birthday. I lost a father I thought I understood, and two brothers I thought I could trust. I sat there, feeling invisible. The empire was worth $29 million. $29 million. And I got a locked phone. The silence in that house was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I looked down at the screen, blank and lifeless, but it felt like it was staring back at me. That phone carried something more than messages or apps. It carried a secret. I didn't know how I knew. I just did. Growing up, I always felt like the odd one out. Mark and Jason, my brothers, they were already teenagers when I was still figuring out how to ride a bike. By the time I was 10, they were already helping Dad close deals. They wore suits to dinner sometimes. I wore paint on my fingers. I wasn't like them. I sketched. I built things. I dreamed. Dad used to say, "You'll find your place in the business when you're ready." But when? When was I going to be ready? I watched them climb, take on more responsibility, and become the faces of the company. Me, I stayed in the background, a quiet observer. Even when I asked questions, I got polite smiles and vague answers. "Don't worry, kid," Mark would say. "There's time." Jason would just nod, already halfway out the door. But time passed, and nothing changed. When Dad finally said he was stepping back and letting them take the reins, I waited for him to mention me, to say, "And you'll be doing this." But he didn't. I wasn't even part of the conversation. That day, the words felt like nails in my chest. "Mark and Jason will take the helm," just like that, like I wasn't even in the room. I tried to stay calm. I clapped, I smiled, but inside, I was drowning. I walked outside, into the hallway, and just stood there, cold, still, forgotten. Brothers were already laughing, already planning. They'd known. They weren't just taking over, they were taking everything. And Dad? I saw something in his eyes. Not pride, not joy, guilt, and that made it worse. So when he gave me that locked phone, I knew it wasn't just a placeholder. It was a message, one I hadn't figured out yet. I carried it with me everywhere. In my backpack, on my nightstand, beside my sketchbooks. I stared at it like it might blink or speak. I asked Dad again, "Why did you give me this?" He just said, "Because you're ready." I asked, "Ready for what?" He looked away. I knew something was wrong. Something deeper than business or favoritism. Something that scared even him. I asked my brothers. They shrugged it off. Maybe it's a personal thing, a backup phone. Who knows? But their eyes told me otherwise. I knew then that I'd been kept in the dark, but not because I wasn't ready. Because I wasn't supposed to know what was really going on. One night, I took the phone to a friend who was good with tech. We tried everything. The PIN didn't work. The fingerprint was blocked. We couldn't bypass the encryption. But we found one strange thing. The phone was registered under my father's company name, and it had custom firmware. It wasn't bought from any store. It had been built, probably for executive use. Then I remembered something. Once, months ago, I brought coffee to Dad's office. I saw a similar black phone on his desk. When he noticed me looking, he quickly turned it face down. I thought nothing of it then, but now, I realized he had given me his phone, or at least a copy. That phone held secrets, one he didn't want to leave behind. A few days later, Mark handed me a USB stick. No explanation. Just, "You'll want to see this." He said Dad asked him to give it to me. I didn't trust him, but I took it. That night, I plugged it into my laptop. Two files. One was audio. One was a zip folder. I played the audio first. It was Dad's voice. "If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't say it in person. There are things I've kept from you. Things you need to know. You're the only one I trust now. The company, it's in danger. They're bleeding it. Quietly, slowly. But I see it. I just can't prove it. Not publicly. This phone, and the data on that stick. It's yours now. Do what I couldn't." I sat frozen. My fingers trembled. I opened the zip folder. Inside, spreadsheets. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. Money is moving between fake subsidiaries. Dates and signatures. A trail. And at the center of it, J&A Holdings. Jason and Mark, my brothers. I felt like the floor had dropped beneath me. It wasn't just favoritism. They were robbing him. Robbing all of us. Siphoning the empire, dollar by dollar, property by property, disguised as restructuring, hidden behind fake board approvals. And Dad knew. He'd seen it, but they'd boxed him out, left him powerless. The father I thought had turned his back on me had actually been fighting from the inside, and losing. And now he was passing the torch to me. I was 19, with no title, no authority, no power, but I had the truth. I had evidence. I had Dad's voice in my ear telling me, "Don't let them win." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I started tracking everything. Their meetings, their calls. I followed paper trails, quietly, patiently. I found shell companies under names I didn't recognize, but all traced. Back to J&A I started, backing everything up to hidden drives. One wrong move, and they could bury me. Or worse, discredit me. I reached out to someone. Dad used to work with an old advisor named Mr. Lin. He was shocked but not surprised. "They've been getting bold," he said. "They think no one's watching." I asked him to help me get the files authenticated, quietly. We needed to be precise. If I exposed them too early, they'd spin the story, turn it on me. I had to time it perfectly. Meanwhile, I pretended nothing was wrong. I smiled at family dinners. I made jokes with Mark. I nodded during Jason's presentations. But inside, I was boiling. Every time they laughed, every time they boasted, I remembered Dad's tired eyes. The way he looked away when I asked him many questions. He wasn't disappointed in me. He was ashamed of ***. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. They were planning something big. A full transfer of assets to a new company, offshore, and traceable. They were days away from making it permanent. I had to move fast. I compiled everything into a single file. Documents, recordings, emails, voicemails. I wrote a summary letter, and I sent a copy to the board's legal advisor. I requested to speak at the next meeting. No one knew why, not even Dad. That morning, I walked into the boardroom with my heart in my throat. My brothers were there, calm, confident. Dad sat quietly at the head of the table. The agenda said asset optimization proposal. I knew what that meant. They were about to finish the heist. I stood up. "Before we begin, I have something to present." The room went silent. I plugged in the USB and projected the screen. A wall of numbers, transactions, and signatures flashed across the boardroom display. "Everything you see here," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "was done under the name of J&A Holdings, which, in case anyone forgot, stands for Jason and Mark Associates." The room fell silent. Jason forced a laugh. "You're reaching, kid." But I kept going, showing timestamps, wire transfers, offshore accounts, and property deeds. Every slide was another dagger of truth. Then Dad spoke. "Stop." He stood slowly, his gaze moving from me to them. "Tell me this isn't real." Neither of them said a word. The silence confirmed everything. The legal advisor leaned forward, nervous. Mr. Parker, this evidence is extensive. We'll need to review immediately. Jason slammed his fist on the table. You can't prove intent. I looked straight at him. Maybe not intent, but I can prove theft. That day didn't just expose corruption. It shifted the ground beneath our family's name. But I knew they would fight back. My brothers had money, media, and influence. They could twist the truth into anything they wanted. I needed something undeniable. Dad's phone still had one last locked folder titled Truth. It required Face IDs. I remembered his encrypted signature embedded in a company token, a failsafe he once mentioned. With help from Mr. Lin, we traced it to a private safe inside our legal department. When we opened it, there it was, a black card labeled Parker Authentication Key. I used it. The folder opened. Inside were video recordings from Dad's office camera. Each file matched the dates of the transactions. Every whisper, every betrayal. In one of them, Jason and Mark stood across from him. You're old, Dad. It's time we take over, Mark said coldly. Take over, not tear down, Dad replied. Jason smirked. You built an empire on loyalty. We'll rebuild it on profit. After they left, Dad turned to the camera, his eyes tired. Ethan, if you ever see this, protect what matters. Not the money, the truth. That was the moment I knew what I had to do. Parker Enterprises' annual gala was just days away, a night broadcast live, full of cameras, investors, and reporters. My brothers planned to announce a new era of leadership. I planned to end their era entirely. I walked into the gala wearing the same suit I'd worn to Dad's last board meeting. The hall glowed with gold lights and false smiles. My brothers stood on stage, proud, polished, confident. When the lights dimmed, I sent a signal to the AV engineer. The giant LED screen behind them flickered, froze, and then Dad's face appeared. If you're watching this, it means I can no longer protect what I built, his voice said. But the truth will. The crowd went silent. Then the videos played one after another, the deals, the signatures, the confrontation. Gasps filled the hall. My brother's smiles vanished. The truth played out in front of everyone, investors, board members, press. By the time the last video ended, the board had already voted to suspend them indefinitely. They shouted, denied, begged, but no one listened. Justice didn't roar. It whispered. It came with silence, the kind that breaks a man. Later that night, I found them in Dad's old office. The Empire's throne room was empty now, stripped of its pride. Mark sat slumped in a chair, Jason pacing in the corner. You think you won? Mark asked quietly. No, I said. Dad did. Jason's voice cracked. He chose you. I nodded. Because I chose honesty. They didn't respond. They just stood, broken, and left. I watched them walk out of the office, to shadows fading into the dark hallway. For a long time, I stood alone, listening to the faint hum of the lights and the echo of everything we had lost. Months passed. Parker Enterprises became Parker Legacy Group, smaller, humbler, cleaner. I didn't chase revenge anymore. I chased purpose. Every project we built carried Dad's words engraved on the wall. Integrity is inheritance. Mark moved overseas. Jason disappeared from public life. And I finally slept without the weight of anger pressing on my chest. Sometimes, I still replay Dad's voice in my head. Real strength isn't in revenge, it's in redemption. I understand it now. Some stories aren't about victory or defeat. They're about awakening. I once thought I had been left behind, but I was being prepared to see what others couldn't, to protect what truly mattered. In the end, truth doesn't need to scream. It just waits patiently until someone brave enough gives it a voice. Because truth doesn't need noise. It only needs time to be heard.